Welcome to the Drilldown, in-depth answers to
oilfield questions.
Yes, that's right.
This is the show that neither one of us could decide who was going to host it.
That's right. So we're going to just do it together.
Because we were both pleased and embarrassed as a result of last week's show.
So last week, if the listeners would remember that we talked about movies that had an exclamation point in the title.
Movies.
That's exactly right.
An exclamation point.
That's
in the
right.
title.
And a couple of interesting things happened. One is that you, I believe, challenged folks to find movies with an exclamation point in the title that were Oscar worthy. Right?
Because I could not imagine that there would ever been a movie like, Airplane was the obvious one, has an exclamation point.
Right.
Never going to get an Oscar.
So we find out that there are movies that have exclamation points in the title that have gotten Oscars. And two, I found out that this, challenge received more listener feedback than anything else we've ever said. So,
yeah, when you're an idiot, people do yell at you. So we're going to dedicate the show to Oscar Plowman. The entire show.
Owen Plowman.
Sorry.
Oscar.
Yeah. Well, Owen, who should get an Oscar, Plowman, because he pointed out the glaring, obvious one for two guys from Oklahoma, and that is what, John?
The movie Oklahoma, with an exclamation point in the title, received several Oscars way back when. So, lesson learned, right?
And not just that, Owen gave us the other one, which has not one,
not two,
but three exclamation points.
Torah. Yes, absolutely.
Yes,
very good.
With every Torah having an exclamation point. Owen, way to go. The whole show's dedicated to you.
So I want to turn this a little bit and say, movies with question marks in the title now. Because an interesting fact, for the longest time, Hollywood thought that if you put a question mark in the title of a movie, it was box office disaster, sort of like putting a negative in front of your price of oil, right?
So what happened to Virginia Woolf?
Well,
is that what it was?
Who's afraid of Virginia Woolf?
What happened?
There you go. Right. Yeah. And I thought perhaps you would come up with your other favorite, which is "Dude, Where's My Car?" So anyway, send us your favorite movie with a question mark in the title. There will be a special shout out given to those who can come up with movies with the most different kinds of punctuation in the title. There you go.
So Owen, this is going out to you,
there
man.
You go.
You get a head start.
All kinds of
question mark one.
Dashes, ampersands,
but we
possessive apostrophes.
Actually, have a topic for today.
That's right,
and it ties to this thing that our team does every quarter.
That's right.
Which is show up for work for their paycheck. There you go. The other thing they do is we have a whole bunch of people on that we've retained for a decade or longer, for 12 years. And their job is what?
Independent engineers out in the field, and they help us. They gather information that allows us to track the change in well costs. And so we're just now getting in information for the second quarter of 2020, so hot off the press, as it were.
Because we're recording this in July,
so
the second quarter's finished a couple weeks ago.
Yeah,
and so
we've spoken about this in the past a little bit. In that, what we're trying to track are think of it as the spot price for drilling and completing a well.
The price that happens right now.
That's right.
As opposed to something that was contracted over a 2 or 3 year period.
That's right.
It's today's price.
Today's price. If you were going to do it again, here's what it would be. So,
and this is part of what service do we have?
Well, it's part of our drilling and completion cost index series. So DCS is our national.
You can look it up on the website.
Drilling and completion costs. Anyway, what we find is that in Q2, in aggregate, well costs are down about 4%. They were down between 5 and 6 in 4% overall, right?
That's it?
Yeah, that's it. But again, we're measuring it just from Q1 to Q2. So it's a 4% decrease.
Not for the year then, because Q1 was down by...
between 5 and 6%, if I remember correctly. So we're looking at an annualized drop of about 16%, 4 quarters of a minus 4%, decline. We give you that kind of an annualized drop, which is pretty steep. So... and again, it's a mixed bag. In this particular quarter that just ended, stimulation costs were down about another 6%. Drilling rig costs were down about 4%. OCTG costs were down about 4%. So you get a mixed bag. Now, it's not everything's down the same amount, but
now if I've got a drilling rig that's on a 6-month contract.
Yes.
We're not looking at that drilling rig, are we?
No, we're not. We're not trying to track how that rig's day rates might have changed from Q1 to Q2.
Because it probably didn't.
Probably
because it's under contract at a certain aggrade to
term.
term.
That's right. Yeah. So
this is the rig that goes. It's a brand new contract.
Yeah, right.
It just spudded a well.
Yeah. What's its rate going to be? Absolutely. And the same goes for completing a well, fracking a well, and so forth. Directional drilling, all the engineering services, fluids, and so forth. So, so soft and getting softer. What's interesting is that we've been doing this now since 2008, so we're into our third cycle.
I'm exhausted. To do something for that long, 12 years, I'm just exhausted.
So, but what's interesting when you do it for that long is certain patterns begin to emerge.
Aha.
And the thing that strikes me is that well costs having now fallen since the start of the year, we're down to a point where, which is close to where pricing bottomed in the two previous cycles. So by that I mean in 2008, 2009, when rig count weakened at that point, pricing fell but bottomed out in the second half of 2009, and again back in 2015 and 16 when rig activity fell so much. Pricing bottomed out in the second half of 2016.
Oh, and that was like more than a year after
rig
activity had started
in
falling.
both of those cases, yeah. But again, remember, rig activity was falling, but it took a long time to fall. So 2015-16, the most recent downturn, rig count ultimately fell about 75%. Over that roughly 2-year time frame. This time around,
gentle fall.
Yeah, it kept going on and on.
On.
This time we've seen rig count fall about 75% in roughly 1 quarter. So the decline has been, which speaks, I think, a lot to how our industry has changed. But what's fascinating is that when we construct this index of well costs as we've done, that the low points in the two previous cycles, we're basically at the low point in terms of well costs that are similar to the low points we saw at the bottom of the two previous cycles.
Okay, so now just to make sure I understood that.
Yeah.
Prices get cheaper.
Yes.
And they get cheaper and cheaper until they reach some point of cheapness.
Yeah, that's right. And then they stop falling.
And the bottom cheapness in both the 2009 downturn and the 16 downturn were approximately
about the same. Yeah, and we're to that point once again.
We're already there.
Yes,
Ish.
Yeah, we're very close. So the thought would be, if history is a guide, that maybe from this point forward, the well costs probably wouldn't fall very much. It might fall a little bit, 1%, 2%, 3%, something like that, but not this kind of rapid quarter-to-quarter change that we've seen the last 6 months.
So the ultimate outcome of rig count decline and cost of well decline.
Yes.
Same distance of decline.
Yeah.
It just happened way faster.
Absolutely. Right.
Is this, I mean, I hate the term, is this the new
normal?
Yeah.
Well,
abnormal?
Yeah, that's a good question. The other thing that comes to my mind is, in the past two recoveries, past two cycles, as things began to improve, we saw prices began to recover pretty quickly. Generally, the pattern was that oil prices began to improve. 1 quarter later, rig count began to improve. 1 quarter after that, well cost numbers began to rise. And so the question in my mind is, does that happen again this time around, right? Because one of the things that was characteristic of back in 2015 and 16 anyway was rig count began to get a little bit better, but the high-spec rigs, the ones that could do the best, high-spec drilling rigs, the one that could do the best job of drilling those long lateral wells, the industry was moving strongly toward long lateral wells. So rig count didn't have to go up very much, and all of a sudden you had almost 100% utilization in that category of drilling rigs. And so pricing for drilling rigs began to improve pretty substantially soon after rig count began to recover, even though rig count was pretty low. Well, I'm looking at it today saying, man, rig count below 300, even if it begins to go up, I think it's a long time before you begin to see 100% utilization in any category of equipment.
Because I had, in January, I had 700 or 800 of these high-spec rigs running.
Right, yeah.
And now I have 250 of them running.
Yeah.
So I have a few extra.
Well, so we'll have a lot of extra rigs. We obviously know we're going to have a lot of extra frac equipment, and so forth. So from an equipment standpoint, we aren't going to get back to 100% utilization anytime soon. But as the point we were talking about earlier is, I think the shortage will be, I think the utilization, 100% utilization will be around people, right?
Because I got all the rigs in the world. I got all the pump trucks. Heck, I've got...
Parking lot's kind of empty, though, right? Because I got nobody showing up for work, right? They've all gone off someplace else.
Because if I wanted to go to Midland, Texas,
right,
I could get a room.
These days, yeah. But so my point is that, there will come a day when oil prices are high enough, rigs begin to go back to work, and there'll be plenty of equipment. The question is, will there be people to go out there and crew up those rigs and pump trucks and things like that?
Has there ever been the day when there weren't people that showed up?
Well, the people do show up, but rates rise in order to entice the people back into the field. So I think I think we'll begin to see some recovering in pricing. It's not because you're paying money to a rig, you're paying money to a person, and you need to pay a higher rate to get them back on the job, I think. So,
though, if you take this downturn like it is, it hits so hard.
Right.
You go on LinkedIn, and even the floor hands are on LinkedIn now.
Sure.
And they say, man, it's been great working on, the Betty Sue number 12 rig for the last, 3.5 years.
Right.
Gonna miss you guys.
Yeah.
I'll be back. And, I just think those guys will come back, because what are they going to do? They will have sold their bass boat.
Right, yeah.
And but I always believe that people do come back.
Well, the oil patch has had a reputation of being a well-paying job, right? So you think about that task done in other places for other industries, and usually the oilfield hand pays pretty well, relatively speaking. And I think that'll probably be the case again. But it will be a while before those folks begin to return. And in the meantime, the labor pool will be shrinking. So we'll see how that goes.
Not the people themselves will be shrinking. They're getting fatter right now. But the numbers of people.
The numbers of people will be shrinking. Absolutely, right. Anyway, thanks for listening to the Drill Down this week. I'm John Spears.
And Owen, thanks, man. I'm Richard Spears.